but he would withdraw to desolate places and pray. Luke 5:16.
Thank you, Madeline. Church, good morning. Glad you're here. You have probably heard this sermon illustration before or me talk about this because I used to box, okay? And I talk about it a lot because it is like 1/3 of my personality traits here, okay? So forgive me, all right? But growing up, I had this boxing coach, and his name was Abel. And Abel would do this thing with all these new guys coming in where he would invite these new boxers into the ring, and he would warn you. He said, whenever we spar, I'm going to punch you in the stomach really hard, and it's for your good. And so whenever it was my time for this to happen, me and Abel are dancing around the ring, and I'm a scared 15-year-old boy, so I'm tucking my elbows like this, like a chicken, like trying to cover. And I guess I didn't cover enough because my guard was not up, because before I can even realize what's going on, I am fully on my knees, hunched over, tears in my eyes, trying to hold in my lunch, okay? And I tell you that in that moment, the only emotion I felt for that man was hate, okay? I want to be very honest, right? Like, how dare you punch me? I'm in so much pain. I'm a kid. Why would you do this to me? But as the pain passed me, here's one thing I realized very quickly, is that this was for my good. This tough moment, it grew me as a boxer. It let me get prepared. It was good for me. And so I say all of this to say this morning, I'm going to say some things that might sound a little like I'm laying it on thick, okay? Wait till the end for me, okay? Before you decide if you hate me or not, okay? Because I got to say some tough truths, but I promise that out of these tough truths come some really good things. We've been in our Holy Habits series, and this is where we're talking about the practices of Jesus, the things that he did. And I want to be really clear here. We copy Jesus, and we're doing these practices not to gain favor with God, but just to know him and to look more like him, right? Like we don't fast and read our Bible so God will show favor and love us more. That's not it. But no, it is because us as Christians, it is like our life mission to imitate Jesus in every single thing that we do. He is our focus. He is our goal. Eyes on him. Literally, the name Christian means little Christ, okay? Like in the Greek, like little Christ. That is who we are. We are trying to be little Jesuses. And so, church, if that is our goal, if that is our mission, like what everyone in this room is striving for and needs to do, you need to ask yourself, what is that one thing that's keeping you from doing that? Like one thing, maybe a potential threat, it may be something going on. What is the biggest enemy to your spiritual life? If you were to identify that one thing going on right now that you think, man, if I could just get rid of this, if I could just do this better, we'd be golden. I'd be like the best Christian there ever was. I think for a lot of us, we'd say things like, well, I just don't read my Bible enough. Like, things are really busy right now, but like if I read my Bible more, I'd be good. You say, like prayer's weird for me. I don't really get time to pray. I don't know how to do that well. If I could just pray, I'd be a great Christian. We say, I think a lot of us say if we could just get out of this crazy season in our life, that maybe we'd be good. I think we often blame our spiritual life based on the circumstances that are going on around us. But I want to say all of this to say that I am not convinced the biggest threat to our spiritual life, the biggest enemy for you, is found in your struggle to build disciplines. It's not found in the craziness of life. Those things aren't great, but that's not it. I think for a lot of us, the biggest enemies in our spiritual life is found in our planner. It's in our calendars, what we do week to week. Scholar Dallas Willard says this phrase, that hurry is the great enemy of the spiritual life in our day. You must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life. And if there's one thing that I could say to describe, I think most Americans, is that we are a hurried people. We fill our weekly planners to the brim with things that we need to get done. Some important stuff, I'm not taking away from that, but some really not so important stuff. And I have no problem with a busy life. Don't hear me saying the best thing you do is sit on your couch and do nothing all day, okay? I think that's a waste. But I fully believe that God made us to work. But here's what often happens in us filling our schedule and us working, living this out, is that the moment that we get busy, the thing that me and you throw out first is time alone with God. Or on the opposite end, it's like God gets the table scraps of our time. In Luke 5, we see Jesus heal this man with leprosy. And it is such an awesome miracle when this is going on. Like, people are excited and the energy seems high, you know. People are like flocking to Jesus to be healed and to hear the words that he has to say. And I just imagine, like I'm thinking about being Jesus, you know, like healing people and preaching just seem like really two really important things. Excuse me. And yet here's what the writer of Luke made sure to include about Jesus. In Luke 5:16, but he would withdraw to the desolate places and pray, or the lonely places and pray. Like I said, I cannot imagine anything more important for anyone in this room, or for Jesus, to quite literally be healing people and preaching the word. And yet the need for Jesus to be alone with the Father was never forgotten in the midst of the chaos of Jesus' ministry. Pastor John Mark Comer, he actually calls this out, is that in Luke, you can kind of mark this path that the busier Jesus gets, the more we see him to go and be alone with the Father in prayer. And this, among other places in the Gospels, is where we see Jesus model the holy habit that we'll talk about today and then another, of solitude. To be alone, to make time with just the Lord. A time to go to the desolate, or in other translations, lonely places to be with God. And I think it's important for us to all recognize that if Jesus saw this as important, to leave his busy schedule, to be alone with the Father, then maybe it really is important. But this is the opposite response for a lot of us, right? I know I'm not alone in this. We ditch the Lord in exchange for whatever crazy thing is going on this week. And there's always a crazy thing going on this week. And so here's a problem for so many of us. We have come to put our schedules over our time with God. We have made an idol of our calendars. And how are we to expect to look more like Jesus if we are not spending time with Jesus? We are conformed by the things that we give our attention to. I fully believe that. So what are you giving your attention to? And so today I've got two practices that are kind of solutions for us in this. But these are like some of the two most avoided things, and yet I fully believe in our context, the two most needed things, okay? It is silence and solitude, but we're going to go in reverse order. So solitude first, okay? And so I want to be very, very clear here. I get, as I'm preaching all of this, I don't say this as a burden on you. Like we're talking about solitude. This is not a burden on you. I don't want this to feel like one more thing you now have to cram in your schedule to be a good Christian, or another thing that we fail at in our lives. That's not what this is. Solitude is supposed to be the place that we get rest and strength to keep going. The fuel for us to keep going by staying connected to the Father. Billy Graham said it best when he said, we cannot afford to be too busy to pray. We need that refuel, the connection to him. And I think the sentiment is shared with solitude. We must be alone with God. It is a necessity. The first time we see Jesus actually go into solitude, it's in Matthew 4:1. And I have to be careful. This is the fasting verse that everyone talks about, right? We'll get there later, but not today, okay? Matthew 4:1, Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. The first time we see, oh, sorry, did I forget part 2? This is embarrassing, awkward. I'll tell you for that part 2. And after fasting 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. So here's what we're seeing is that Jesus is he's just baptized by John, and then the Spirit leads him into the wilderness to be tempted. And I think for a lot of us, we read this passage, and what we see here is we think, oh, this was a place of weakness for Jesus. You know, like he was hungry, he was starved, like obviously he's weak. This is the moment the devil's trying to tempt him. But here's what I think is actually going on in this moment. That the Spirit brings Jesus to a place of solitude and fasting for spiritual strength for the temptation about to happen. I mean, yes, Jesus was tempted in the desert. Jesus was physically hungry for the Jesus was physically hungry, but spiritually Jesus was connected to the Father. I think these 40 days were in preparation for what was about to happen. And so as we keep reading about the testing of Jesus in Matthew 4, the first temptation the devil brings to Jesus is to turn stones into bread. And I read one commentator who said this, that the temptation here isn't just that Jesus would eat and kind of be done, like that was there, but really the real temptation going on here was that Jesus would act independent from the Father on his own power. And I love that because I think at the heart of solitude and all these other spiritual disciplines, holy habits, whatever you call them, at the heart of it, it's this. That's my nephew. Oh my gosh, sorry. He's adorable. Amen, brother. Glad you're here. At the heart of it is this. We are to be connected to God, not trying to do life independent from him. And solitude is the chance and the place that you and I can go to the Lord to be with him. And it's quite literally the chance to say no to all the other things that try to take our attention away from him and to keep our eyes and our focus on God. And so is it not only a way that we are to stay connected to the Father, but it is a way that we need to prioritize God. I have met few people in my life who weren't busy. Few people, okay? If I said show of hands, who's in a busy season of life right now? Like half of us are going to raise our hand, right? Like we're all busy. If I ask you how you're doing, half the time we hear good but busy, okay? Like this is like normal for us. There's no getting around it. I'm very convinced that we're probably going to be busy until we go, okay? Somehow we're getting busier, but we're not getting more time in the day also, so I'm really not sure how this is happening, like where these minutes are coming from. And so we cannot use busyness as an excuse because busyness doesn't end. It is not an excuse not to spend time with God. Like we can't say, yeah, after this busy season, I'll have some solitude, I'll finally start taking this time with the Lord. Because the busy season is never over. But here's where solitude comes in. It is having the intentional times to be alone with him and making it a sacred part of our week. It is absolutely needed if we are going to prioritize God over our calendars, over our busyness. But I need to be very, very honest with you. Of all the holy habits we are talking about, we will talk about, the one that I struggle with the most is probably this one. And I'm not alone. Maybe this is pot calling the kettle black a little bit with this one. I know that when life gets busy, this is the one that is easy to get rid of, and I repent of that, and I'm sorry. But it's because in our world, we have believed this lie that the worst possible thing me and you can be is bored. If you don't believe me, pull out your phone. See how many apps you have right now just designed to keep you distracted until you can do something else, right? We as a people have almost killed the idea of boredom or time to do nothing. And because of this lie that being bored is wrong, and because of this lie that so many of us have believed, we now ask ourselves when we're approached with this idea of solitude, of spending time alone with God, we ask ourselves, I've only got so many minutes, so much time on this earth, and now you're telling me that the thing that I need to do most with it is to sit alone and do nothing but listen? Absolutely yes. A loud, resounding yes. We are overworked, over-distracted, and if heaven is the place where I can dwell with God, like when I die and go to heaven, like that's the point, is that I'm with Jesus, okay? If the point of all of Jesus dying on the cross is that I'm reunited to him, then quite literally making time for solitude is the time where I can keep my eyes focused on what this is all about. And it's him. Solitude is a necessity for us in the Christian life. It is not an option. Because it is in the act of solitude that we prioritize what matters and we remind ourselves what it is that this is all about, and that is Jesus. But it is when we prioritize Jesus with solitude that we can practice rest with Jesus. And I really want to get that clear, okay? Because I understand that this sounds like another burden, and I really said I didn't want to do this. Like saying things like we do solitude to prioritize Jesus sounds like another thing on our plate. It doesn't sound restful. But solitude, as much as it's needed to prioritize Jesus, is also a place to refuel and recharge in Jesus, as I said earlier. And I think Timothy Keller hit this pretty well. He once said this about prayer, that prayer is duty turned to delight. That while, yes, it is a discipline, it is also a joy. And so I think the sentiment can be same about this. That as you practice solitude, it's going to feel clunky and weird, and you're going to want to stop. Don't. Because the more you do it, the more you rest and recharge in the Lord, the better. So, okay, we find ourselves in solitude. We're going to carve out this time in our schedule where we say, yeah, I'll be alone with God here. This is my time for him. We make it sacred. We make it important to be with him. What do we do now? And this is where silence comes in. But silence feels awkward, okay? We in America, we don't like silence, right? Like, I told someone that I was preaching on silence and solitude, and they said, hey, you should start your lesson out with, like, saying nothing for 10 minutes. I said, no, that's weird. We're not doing that. Like, I know me and you, we're cool with prayer, right? I think a lot of people, like, we feel comfortable, at least enough to, like, say stuff to God. We can pray before meals, you know, that's easy. We've seen that modeled a lot. We can ask God for the things that we need. We can even ask God for the things we want. We can tell God how our day's going, you know. But the moment that you ask me to sit before the Lord and say nothing, that's uncomfortable. Because we as people love to talk. If you've ever talked to someone, you've probably noticed that most of the time they're not actually listening. They're just waiting for you to shut up so they can start talking, right? Yes? Not alone? Okay? We love to talk. And so I think the struggle for me and you in this practice is going to be being with God in the silence. The amount of times I've given up on silence and solitude 2 minutes in because it was uncomfortable is a little embarrassing, I'll be honest. And I think part of the reason for me and you is that we don't know how to be silent. Because in the silence, we know we should be listening. That's the point of not talking, is to hear. But I don't think we know what we're listening for. When I was in Bible college, there was this growing trend of people around me who would say things like, yeah, I heard God talk to me, you know, like he spoke in my ear, you know. And I was like kind of newer to like learning what I believed and stuff like that. And so I kind of just assumed that I was a bad Christian or like God didn't like me because I've never had God audibly talk in my ear, you know. And it never happened. But later on, I realized that the voice of God, like, while it's not found and audible, and I'm not saying that it can't happen, you know, I'm not going to be the one to put God in a box. But I will say that the voice of God is found in his word in the Bible. I meant to bring a Bible up here, but the Bible, okay? It's found in his word because when we sit in silence before God, we're listening, but we're not listening in the same way that you take a phone call, right? We're listening in remembrance of what God said. Like silence is the time to meditate on the scriptures. Colossians 3:2, backwards. Set your mind, 3:2. Set your minds on things above, not on things that are on earth. And it is in silence that me and you can set our mind on those things above. And it's in our times of silence where we can conform to the image of God as we see to Him. Because whatever thing you give your attention towards will be what you look like. Parents, your kids probably look like a mini version of you in some way, no matter how hard they try and get away. There's some remnant of you there, right? Because whether they realize it or not, they look up to you, okay? They see how you conduct yourself. That's rubbed off on them. I know growing up, I wore cargo shorts and like a dad polo because I thought my dad was awesome and I wanted to look like him, and also because it made my sister so mad that I dressed like a dad at 14, okay? It was so funny. We conform to what we look like, and silence is the chance that we get to listen, to meditate on the Word of God, and in doing so, look more like Him as we give Him our attention. And so silence for me and you is a time, one, to help us know God's Word as we meditate it, as we put it in our heart, internalize His Word, and conform to Him as we keep our minds and our hearts on Him, rather than conforming to all of the other things in this life that try to take our attention away. But church, as we get near the end, we need to ask yourself, if this is going to work, you have to make the conscious decision, everyone in this room, is this worth it? Time is a valuable currency. As we leave here today, very quickly, the things in our schedule will try to take precedent over our time with the Lord. It's been happening before this. We talked about this. It's going to happen after. So if you realize it's worth it, if you realize you need it, and a change needs to be made, we need to make it important, right? Like, we can't know we need it and then neglect it. Every day you wake up and you brush your teeth. At least I hope you wake up every day and brush your teeth, okay? Like, important. You never second guess the need to brush your teeth, okay? It takes 3 minutes, but it saves you from having stinky breath. Our times of solitude and silence must be as prioritized as brushing our own teeth. Maybe not the most glamorous thing to do in the Christian life, to sit there and listen, but needed. And if it's needed, you're going to need a plan, okay? We have sheets of paper as you walk out of here. I really encourage you to grab one. These are challenges for the week with the scriptures of what we've been talking about. And this is for you, so we can live out this plan of people who spend time with God. So as we leave here today, reprioritize Him, rest in Him through the act of solitude and silence. Can I pray for you? Lord, may we find rest in you. God, please, may we find delight in this. May this not be a burden. But Lord, may we find and hear you in solitude and silence. God, as our schedules try to peek back up on us, I pray that you would please don't let the temptation to put